pay for any of that or to leverage any of that targeted rate, but for the business community. And I think we need to really tell the business community, as this paper doesn't, what the sliding scale actually means for them. I'm not so worried about the smaller businesses because they will get some relief, those on CVs less than 750k or those on CVs more than 7 million. I'm worried about the small to medium-sized businesses because if you look at those on the bread and butter of our Auckland economy, if you look at those CVs 750 to 2 million, their fixed transport targeted rate will go from 183 this year to potentially 450 next year, and that's a $145 increase. So if you look, I did a search in my area, and Upland Road Cafe, formerly the Jazz Cafe, 565 Remuera Road, mum and dad business, 1.5 million CV. Their transport targeted rate's going to go from 183 fixed to potentially $450 per annum. And that's on top of the differential, which we've also dragged out another 14 years, narrowing the differential to 2036 to 37. So I think for the business community, they won't see this buried in the Mayor's direction here, but I call upon the business community, particularly those organisations that represent the SMEs, to really have a look at the fine detail here, because it's the small to medium-sized enterprises that are going to be hit the hardest with the movement on the transport targeted rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crum, I know you have to go, so
thank you. Taking me ahead of Councillor Wood.
Yes.
Great, fantastic. I too want to just pick up on the need for referencing myth-busting in the proposal. I think the real question that we should be asking ourselves is why do we feel, why does the Mayor feel that it needs to be in there, and more importantly, why do the public feel the way that they do? And I think that the major issue for us is about trust and tracking with us as a council, and things like putting through the targeted transport levy at the 11th hour just earlier this year do not help us. Going from a 2.5 or a 3.2 rates hike to immediately a 10, and in my area averaging around 15. So I would like to also pick up on something that Councillor Brewer's raised. I think the real issue for us, and maybe I'll phrase it, the real vision for us, is around that alternative funding, alternative finance, alternative revenue sources work for us. And it's not mentioned here, and it very much should be. We need courage in this particular body of work for us. And I'll just, I don't want to make those comments. I do need to go and leave on council business, so thanks for allowing me to speak. But I'll just finish on a really interesting quote by Mark Adamson today. I know some in the room might not appreciate a Fletcher's quote, but here it is. It was just in the Herald today, in an interview around where he thinks things are going for himself and his company. And this is something really relevant for us in terms of courage for alternative financing. He says there's no point in being big for the sake of being big. Whether buying or selling assets, you should ideally get ahead of trends and transact at the right time. So I'd like to say that for us, for the year ahead, for our annual plan, for any proposal, it's about having courage to do things at the right time for this body, for this council.
Thank you, Councillor Crum. I think one of the issues with the myth busting is, unfortunately, through social media and other media outlets, we keep being told we're bankrupt. We're not. We keep being told we're in trouble. We're not. And I did actually ask the Treasurer if he could maybe have a couple of slides if necessary, maybe for next week, because it's very difficult for the Chief Financial Officer to go out to the markets trying to talk about Auckland and trying to get us good rates when we seem to shoot ourselves in the foot as much as possible. So I think that's one of the issues we've got. And as you know, and I will reiterate, we are going to have a workshop in February to discuss the asset sales. And there's always a right time to sell, but what you don't do is go out to the market and say, guess what, we're going to sell all this stuff. give us a fire sale, because it ain't going to be like that.
I think what's being raised here, Madam Chair, is reference to that alternative financing stream within the annual plan documentation.
And I think, yes, I
Wise
think you'll
idea.
find...
I was going to say anything, but I'm ready to.
You will find that maybe we can put something in next week. Anyway. Okay, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just first question, I've got a question for the Chief Financial Officer. When we have after we've had our workshop in February over the EY and Cameron Partners reports, will we then be able to discuss whether those matters that are raised in the reports can be integrated into this annual plan?
Through you, Madam Chair, a number of the items that we will bring back to that workshop will require you to consider how you'd like to proceed, and some of those may require you to go out for consultation. For example, if you make some decisions, which you will need to then make at a committee, with respect to any of the strategic assets, which are the international airport shares, the port, etc., you will need to go out to consultation. Now, with the time frame of that, with the workshop in February and the then committee likely to be March or April thereafter, where you'd like to bring some of that work back, the ability to go out for consultation for this annual plan is quite limited. The other requirement for that is any consultation that we may or may not need to undertake is required to be audited by the OAG. Again, a very tight time frame. With respect to the any decisions that you make with respect to the port, I just would like, through the Chair again, to remind you that in reality you do need the future port study to come in first, and that is July. So that will mean that anything there is the following year.
Okay, thank you. So just on commenting on this, I think it's in the background section, the Mayor says that it needs to be acknowledged that amalgamation has been hard on some people, delivering much greater rate increases than the average. And it's really good that the Mayor has put that in there, because that is the true reality of the situation that exists in some... Yeah, Councillor Cashmore is obviously in that position, but I come across people daily at the moment in my neck of the woods who do raise that concern they have about the rate increases. Yep. But the other issue that I want to raise is the debt level increases as well, because my rough calculations, I don't smoke, so no cigarette packet used, but I find that, in the case of North Shore City, we came into this Auckland Council, I think it was $430 million worth of debt. I think at the moment we've got about $1,000 million or $1 billion worth of debt. If you look at the population of North Shore to the population of Auckland, 16% used to be the rough figure that was the population of North Shore. So the debt level has gone up huge in the last 5 years, and people kind of say to me, George, it's and they're really concerned about it. So that's an area that that we need to look at. And we got the work done on the EY and Cameron Partners report, those reports we got back, and I think they're excellent documents. And despite the fact there may be some strategic assets that we can't look at, there may be some non-strategic assets that we can look at, which could accumulate a reasonable amount of funding, because I think at the moment our balance sheet is a lazy balance sheet, and it needs to be looked at very carefully, and the Chief Financial Officer's nodding there, so
we know
I think that, the Cameron Partners and EY reports clearly indicated that, a lazy balance sheet excuse me, needs to be looked at and worked on with some vigour, because we've got to do that for the people of Auckland. And I do believe that, when the Mayor talks about the Standard & Poor's AA rating, well, that's correct. But if you look in about 3 years' time, we are very high up in the level of debt that we have as a council. we've kind of reached our ceiling, but notwithstanding, because we usually have a cushion between what we borrow. I think it's about nearly $1 billion, but I think that's reasonable, prudent on the part of our financial officers, that we do have that cushion there in case of any eventual happenings occurring. But so I think that that report gives us a good basis for the future. But I do think that we are hoping this council do take on board the the returns that we get from this uniform annual general charge issue, which I've been kind of pushing for some time, because I think we've snookered ourselves to some extent by having a low uniform annual general charge. People know that is the case, and the people that the Mayor's talking about who have taken the brunt of the rate increases over the past 5 years are the ones who would probably get some respite, not much, but it would help them. So, councillors, I implore you to work hard to get the rates calculator out there, but also to make sure that the communities out there understand the true implications of the uniform annual general charge, because what my feedback from talking to people is that it's not a very well understood concept, but when you explain it to them, people realise what the impact is and how it is fairer to have a fixed amount, which is, it can be up to 30%. Obviously, won't be in our case because ours is probably less, around about 20 at $6.50. It's not high, but the one that we've got at the moment is very low, and I don't think it's in the best interest of this council to continue that in the future. So this will go out for consultation. I hope that we can do some work on the EY and Cameron Partners reports, and we'll see what we come up with. The councillors, I think that it's in our interest to work hard to make sure that we do have equity and fairness across the board for all our ratepayers, and that includes the business sector, and I'm concerned as to how they are being kind of singled out with the targeted rate, the transport targeted rate, which I don't think will be particularly fair if the second option that Councillor Clow comes up with is implemented. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I just also remind councillors that at the February finance meeting, at the open meeting, the Chief Financial Officer will be reporting back into what backroom savings that were mentioned in the EY and put into Councillor Brewer's recommendations, what's actually happening in that space. So that will be coming back to the March. I'm being told March, not February. So thank you. Councillor and I.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For 5 years now, I've sat around this table listening to people take the four-letter word debt as a bad word, and the media taking that out to the public to scare the living daylight out of them. I just want to put on the table that for the asset base of this city, we have a responsibility to provide for those that are coming tomorrow the infrastructure development of Auckland. A long time ago, had we agreed at that point in time, we would have had the rail system in place at a very cheap price, other than what we're talking about today. I just remind you also that there's no time other than today that's going to be cheaper to build what we want to build for the city, to borrow what we want to build for this city, and have it ready for those that are coming tomorrow who are going to pay for it. Because that's how it works. It's a long-term payback to provide today the needs of the people of the city. And we talk here about debt and create a lot of fear around it, which is something I don't buy. I'm concerned when I read that saying we should be selling the airport shares and the port shares. These are revenue-producing things which are going to continue to produce revenue tomorrow. That's what it's all about. And we have a balance sheet that we can leverage off to develop and do everything we want today. In another 20 years, they can say, what, those idiots sitting in that council that didn't give us those things today, they had the opportunity. And today we can do it at the price today, and today the rate dropped to 2.5. Interest rates are cheap. And I'll tell you what, to build and do anything today is cheaper today than it will be tomorrow. So while we sit around procrastinating and worrying and creating fear of our public about debt, we're going to go backwards.
That's the way.
And why do you think the Asian countries in 30 years went from rice paddocks to what they are today? Because they had the balls to make the decisions and make things happen. So, councillors, I'm asking you to start thinking positively of the future, and where we go from
What's
here.
their carbon footprint?
Because this is where we want to be in the future, and our people in the future that are coming will be able to pay this off as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said.
Councillor Hulse.
Thank you. Gosh, that was a rousing speech, councillor and I. I kind of agree with most of it, but not all of it. But just a couple of quick things, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is an exceedingly clear and thoughtful presentation. I also think it was absolutely right to put in the so-called sort of myth-busting issues around debt, because just listening to the discussion for the last 25 minutes kind of shows me exactly why that needs to be in there, because, you know, there is a lot of different interpretations of debt, and it's good to have it in one page. Maybe the word myth-busting might have been just a little bit bold, but I think we do need to explain debt to our community, because we certainly don't seem to be able to do it to each other. So in saying that, though, I think it's exceedingly useful for us to have the EY and Cameron Partners reports as part of the process that goes out to our wider community. I don't agree that it's something that we just need to sweep under the table, and I'm very supportive of that, of the asset discussion. I think, though, however, just in that debt discussion, we really need to get over this whole issue of debt expansion and debt being bad. The table on page 4, the key prudential ratio, the interest to revenue ratio, that's what as governors we should understand. And in its most base form, debt buys stuff. Debt bought Colin Maiden Park. We didn't actually pay cash for Colin Maiden Park. That's $70 million in the Ōrākei ward that debt bought. You know, I think we're kind of losing the plot that debt somehow does something unuseful. Debt also bought the Norwest bus or the Northern Busway. Debt buys stuff. We don't just fritter it away. So somewhere in there, I think we can expand the list of what debt buys. And just finally, you know, let's not forget that the so-called high rate increases were part of the amalgamation and the unification of one rate across the city. Some ratepayers were paying very high rates in some areas, like out west. They were paying much higher rates than the people in Central City. Their rates have stayed the same, the Central City went up. You know, that's just what rates amalgamation does, because the West actually had to build a city centre post-1989 amalgamation, so they borrowed heavily and built stuff, and we're seeing the benefits of that now. So I guess, you know, Mr Mayor, good work, well done. Let's hope that we have a rational and useful discussion with our community based on facts. That would be a very good thing.
Right, Councillor Darby.